Hey, everyone, welcome. You're listening to the very first episode of this year's Founders and Funders, a podcast brought to you by the Chennai Angels. Now, if you don't know us yet, TCA has been in the game since 2007, backing some of India's most innovative startups and visionary founders. I'm your host, Ramakrishnan Balasubramanian. I'm an investor at the TCA and also the owner of Synergistix India Private Limited, a sales and marketing company out of Chennai. In this series, we're doing something really exciting. We're sitting down with incredible founders behind our portfolio companies to get the real, unfiltered stories. We'll be diving into their personal journeys, the massive challenges they faced, and those breakthrough milestones that truly shaped their business. And speaking of incredible founders, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest for today. Joining me is Praanesh Bhuvaneswar, co-founder and CEO of Qoruz. Now, if you're in marketing, you know how tough influencer campaigns can be. That's where Qoruz comes in. It's a creative intelligence and collaboration platform that helps brands completely ditch the guesswork. Instead of picking creators based on a hunch, they use deep data to help brands discover, evaluate, and partner with the exact right people. Praanesh, it is fantastic to have you on board. Welcome.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, sir, and it's great meeting you here.
Okay, so this is the aha moment. Let's go back a bit. Influencer marketing is a massive right now. But when you started, it wasn't this obvious. What did you see back then that made you say, wait, there is a massive tech platform to be built here?
So I would like to actually attribute it to my experience in the industry, right? I was one of the fortunate few to get into the digital marketing industry when the industry in itself was framing, right? In digital marketing in 2010, at that point of time, the same year is when Facebook launched Facebook brand pages, right? Community platforms were trying to reorganize themselves into more brand first solutions, and Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and all started following suit, right? Luckily at that moment, being in the nick of things where I was trying to strategize for my brand clients or the prospective clients and all that, we always used to keep thinking, what is the next big thing which is going to happen, which we need to capture fast, right? How the digital industry actually evolves is, and the funny fact of the digital industry is like new things come very fast and some of them leave very fast also, right? And for me, I try to see whether something becomes a trend or mainstream, or a trend mainstream by analyzing what kind of thought leader brands or thought leader marketing teams latch onto something quick, right? And some of them, which I've been following for a long period of time in my career, is the likes of Coke, the likes of Pepsi, because these are brands which adapt into anything quick, not leverage a trend like a one-time thing, try to commoditize or try to maybe even operationalize trends, right? Some of these observations, especially when I was closely working with Pepsi was more curious about content creators and influencers. And I'm talking about around 2013, 2014, right? In fact, Pepsi was one of the first to create content IPs in India. And around that time, Pepsi actually sponsored IPL, if you remember, right? One of the first sponsors to IPL. The major portion of Pepsi's marketing was around a property which was led by content creators. They tried to create a show of sorts where different content creators will take different perspectives around IPL and then start the content, rather than Pepsi themselves saying that, we are sponsors, etc. and all that, right? And the budget was massive, right? And some of those content creators today are the icons of creator industry. For example, even Tanmay Bhatt. We worked with Tanmay Bhatt when Tanmay Bhatt had a following of 10-15,000, right? Now is in millions, right? And the entire AAB thing which came after that and all that, we used to work with Tanmay Bhatt's team, which eventually became AAB, right? So a couple of such incidents happened more. In fact, there was one more large political campaign which was happening, which started leveraging Twitter influencers a lot, right? In fact, as much as 60-70% of the spends at that time was on Twitter influencers, and there were even corporate wars which were happening, if you remember. I don't want to get into big specifics, but those were happening on Twitter, driven by influencers, etc., and all that, right? So that was a wake-up call for me, saying that, okay, you know what, if narratives are going to be spoken by other people, not the brand themselves, then this industry is going to get big, right? So then comes, okay, if it's going to become big, what are the systems which are needed to make it stabilized and grow, right? Which obviously needs tech. That's how the genesis came into play.
Great. So let's talk about the pain points and the power of data, which seems to be what is driving your business. It is one thing to have a cool tool, but as investors, we always look for pain. Is it nice to have, or is it something that is must have? So coming back, when you were pitching early on, how did you prove to brands that guessing who to work with was costing them real money? And how did data change their behavior?
Around the time when we started, the industry was framing itself, right? The necessity of a tech play was not discovered by the industry. It was like a more pre-product or pre-industry kind of situations when we started, right? And people were not even able to quantify the amount of problem or the value to the problem which they're ready to put for, right? And that was the journey, or that was like what we used to actually try to benchmark ourselves with. Like in a category which is framed, it's easy to compare against somebody else and say that I'm better than A by XYZ. But if A doesn't exist, if you are the A, then the MVP problem or value problem is something which you should solve for as the pioneer in the industry, right? So it started with that. The more we were able to have conversations again around thought leaders of the industry who were more open to sharing, we were able to isolate out patterns of same problems existing, right? And we try to frame solutions around it. But even for us to understand, is it substantial enough? Is it mission critical, or is it something which I may or may not need, or something like that? It took us almost half a decade, right? Because it's not just about creating the product. Creating the product is one thing. Building the user experience of the product, building the adoption of the product, building the pricing of the product, the cluster versus pricing, that's a journey which we have to do the grunt work for. And we happily did the grunt work, and rather than trying to create and scale a sales or marketing team, the founding team itself spent a lot of time in the market, right? And the more we were able to speak with global leaders who wanted to replicate like pioneer experiences or pioneer marketing strategies, confirmation to us saying that, you know what, we are onto something. That's how we validated the idea, and we started working very closely with those guys, sometimes as much so that we were even confused whether we were a product company or a tech services company, because we used to take requests of what to build next. In a typical tech services company, of course, you take requests. In a product company, you don't take requests. We did take a lot of requests in the early days. Let's say, even if we are doing a contract with some substantial brand, and then they say that like we need these 3 features, we'll go and sign the contract at say a 70% value, what it ideally should be, finish those requests, and then start charging the 100% of the value. That was the journey for us to do both PMF and also build a product which is absolutely critical for them to use.
So if I understand you correct, so they tried it, it works, and they're very happy with it. But yes, lives and dies by retention, correct? So what keeps a brand hooked up campaign after campaign? And honestly, today it's a very crowded space. When investors press you on your moat, is it the data, is it the network effects, or tech? What is the real anchor that keeps a competition from, say, stealing your own clients?
So moat is something which evolves over time, right? What you say is moat today, you need to add plus one more, plus one more every single time. When we started, data was the moat. Platforms, the native platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, Meta, Twitter, they didn't have structured data, right? Our moat at that point of time was just structuring data, right? When platforms started structuring data, then we need to think, okay, if structuring data is going to become standardized, what is going to be our moat? Then we started building a brand layer on top of it. For a while, user experience was a moat. We spend a lot of money in terms of trying to get the user experience right, not just getting the job done, but getting the job done faster and in a more delightful way. And user experience helps a lot in that. And we invested quite a bit of money on user experience, right? That was a moat for a while. After that, we spent a lot of money in terms of branding, positioning, so that when the market was evolving, we wanted to differentiate ourselves with value driven platforms versus price driven platforms. We wanted to be more value driven platform, not a price driven platform, right? Then we started focusing on who are the value driven players and build more only for them, right? So it's like an evolving exercise which we have. And currently, after data structuring, UX, after that, like what did I say? Data structuring, UX, branding. Now we are working on network effects, right? So that's how we are stacking modes.
That's a very interesting point that you make, Praanesh, because very often we get stuck with a moat that is initially presented to us at the beginning of, say, a pitch. So what you're saying is so true. A moat evolves with time, and you have to adapt and ensure the moat stays in place no matter how the journey evolves. Now, I think this is a perfect place to hit a pause. I think you got the foundation. In the next episode, we're going to dive into some messy realities of scaling, of course, the AI disruption, and where Qoruz goes from here. Praanesh, hold the thought. We'll be back for part 2.
Sure thing, excited.